Holy Ghost, Batman, by Amalaron. Chapter 20. Touring with the Duke. Wayne Manor in Gotham City, the next day. Danny woke up to the kind of quiet that only seemed possible in a place the size of Wayne Manor. Definitely different from Fenton Works. No banging tools, no alarms, no family arguments echoing through the walls, which surprised him, given the number of siblings living or visiting here. Just the muted hum of a house that was already awake without him. Sunlight slanted in through the tall windows of the Wayne Manor dining room, catching dust motes in the air. The long table was already set, plates polished, silverware, and a platter of fresh fruit in the center. Alfred stood at his post near the sideboard, ready with his calm efficiency. Danny shoveled in first, still rubbing at his eyes. "Morning," he muttered, collapsing into a chair. "Good morning, Master Daniel," Alfred replied, setting a cup of coffee in front of him. Then he accepted it like a lifeline. A few minutes later came Danny, followed by Sam and Jazz, who stepped around her. She paused in the doorway, one hand nervously tugging at the hem of her new jacket. She wore the fresh jeans they'd bought yesterday, a soft graphic tee under the hoodie, and sneakers that still looked too new. She was too embarrassed to say it, but she wanted to get everyone's reaction to her new clothes. Then he looked up mid-sip and nearly choked on his coffee. "Hey, look at you!" Danny scowled lightly, though her ears turned pink. "Don't make a big deal." But it was already too late. Sam leaned in from the next chair, smiling warmly. "You look great, Danny." Danny grinned. "Yeah, that's what I meant to." Jazz nodded from across the table. "Fits you perfectly. Comfortable?" "Yeah," Danny admitted, sliding into a chair beside Danny, who gave her a hug with one arm and pretending to study the fruit platter. "Way better than the old stuff." Tim arrived next, dressed for success, tie already straightened, expression sharper than the hour should allow. His gaze flickered briefly over the table, then landed on Danny. He stopped. "You look good," he said simply, with a small smile. Then he took his seat without further comment. Danny blinked, startled by the straightforwardness. She ducked her head quickly, but a small grin tugged at her lips. Stephanie bounced in right after him, tossing her back onto a chair. Her eyes lit up immediately. "Finally! Look at you! Actual outfit!" Then he groaned. "Grandma's staff." Stephanie only laughed, popping down herself. "Don't worry. I will give you 1 week before you admit I was right about dresses." "Not happening," Danny shot back, but the smile broke through anyway. Alfred arrived with a tray of eggs, setting them down with practiced grace. He glanced once towards Danny, then inclined his head. "A marked improvement, Mistress Danielle. Quite distinguished." Coming from Alfred, it was as good as a standing ovation. Then he straightened in her chair without even realizing it. Danny hid his grin behind his mug, proud and just a little choked up. Watching her sit there in clothes she'd chosen, it hit him all over again how far they'd come already. "Master Duke has kindly offered to escort you into the city today." Danny blinked. "Like an official tour?" "A guide," Alfred replied. "As a local, Gotham can be labyrinthine to the uninitiated." Danny perked up. "Labyrinthine sounds awesome." Sam crossed her arms. "You're not getting lost on purpose." An hour later, the four of them stepped out to find Duke leaning against a black SUV that looked like it had just rolled off the set of a spy movie. He gave them a grin that was more easygoing Big Brother than formal Wayne family host. "All right," Duke said, gesturing to the car. "We will hit some highlights, grab lunch, and I will try to keep you out of the weird parts of Gotham." Then he climbed into the back. "Define weird." "Not today," Duke said smoothly. They pulled away from the manor, and wound through the wooded outskirts before the skyline began to rise ahead of them. Gotham's towers catching the mid-morning sun in fragmented flashes. The SUV rolled up onto a board suspension bridge, and Duke nodded towards the green and gold sign overhead. Harley Quinn Parkway, he said. City named it a few years back after she, well, depends on who you ask. Official stories, community contributions, unofficially, Gotham just has a sense of humor. Danny pressed against the window. You named the whole bridge after a clown? Duke smirked. A clown you had a dinner with the other night. I think she had a nuke at that time. So, only in Gotham. All four of them shared a very concerned look. It wasn't like it was the first time they dealt with a nuke, but Duke brushing it off as almost normal made them feel like either they were really country bumpkins, or Gotham was really just weird like that. Crossing into the city proper was like slipping between worlds. One moment there were freeways and overpasses, the unusual monotony of highway sprawl. The next, Gotham swallowed them whole, steel and stone tangled together, old and new, forced into a kind of uneasy truce. Ornate art, decoffeators, still blazed with neon marquins, wedged between mirrored glass towers that clawed at the sky. Street vendors lined the sidewalks, their carts steaming with pretzels and dumplings, flowers spilling from black iron rails planted set between the grid of concrete. Everything was layered, messy, and alive. One area even looked like a knockoff Times Square. Duke handled the wheel with practiced ease, cutting through traffic like he'd been born to it. He didn't linger on explanations, but his voice carried the calm assurance of a native son. Robinson Park up ahead, bigger than Central Park, but you will only ever see a third of it because the rest is fenced off for safety. He gestured with his chin as they passed the wrought iron gates. On the left, the Gotham Historical Museum, carved griffins on every corner. Most of them have cameras in the eyes now, but nobody talks about that. Jazz scribbles furiously in her notebook, eyes darting between landmarks. Her notes were almost audible in the scratch of her pen. Every building was another clue to the city's character, and she was determined to unveil it. Sam leaned halfway out the window, phone camera flashing at every mural and graffiti wall they passed. Bright colors against brick, political slogans, stylized faces of heroes, and marred trees. These are incredible, she said, already curating them in her head. It's like the whole city is an open-air gallery. Danny leaned forward between the seats, practically vibrating with questions. What's that building with the clock? Do you really get blizzards and heat waves in the same month? Is it true that people go ice skating on the river? What happens when it floods? Duke filled them as best as he could, chuckling under his breath. Clock tower? Bruce owns it. Barbara's apartment is around here somewhere. Weather? Yeah. Gotham can make up its mind. We only get both in the same month if Mr. Freeze has been busy though. Ice skating? Sure. Until the ice cracks. We will take you later this year if you want. Cass loves it. And floods? We are not as under the sea level as New Orleans or Houston, but it happens every couple of years. Everyone just pretends it's normal. Hazard of the concrete jungle. Danny's eyes widened like he'd just described an adventure. Danny, meanwhile, stayed quiet, gazing out the window as the streets blurred past. Gotham was chaos bolted up and left to ferment. Messy, restless, alive. There was something intoxicating about it, something that made his core hum, not in warning, but in recognition. He wasn't sure if it was good or bad yet, just that the city didn't ignore you. It grabbed a hold and demanded you see it for what it was, broken and beautiful, layered and living. He figured it might be Lady Gotham pulling on his interests occasionally, preening over some landmark, or some other ghost, maybe. And even during the day, Gotham had a lot of ghosts. At least once he'd had to stop Danny from waving to another kid ghost. When Duke asked about it, Danny made the excuse that sitting in an expensive car like this made her feel like Princess Diana, so she was trying her royal wave. Both Duke and Danny winced at this, for different reasons, but laughed to keep the atmosphere light. They stopped in Old Gotham's market district, where colorful awnings flapped overhead, and the air was thick with the smell of grilled skewers, fried dough, and roasted coffee beans. Duke led them to a vendor, smelling hollow meat pipes. Fatire, the sign said, the size of Danny's head. Duke grabbed a few extra for the house with spinach filling. Damien likes this place, so I always grab him some when I'm here. Danny bit into hers and froze. Okay, this is the best thing in the city. Better than Alfred's biscuits? Duke asked. Then he hesitated, chewing. Top 3. Sam drifted towards a table stacked with vintage records, debating with the vendor over jazz pressings. Chaz stayed close to Duke, asking about local history while jolting down street names. Danny sat back at the table, watching the mix of tourists, families, and hard-eyed locals weave through the crowd. The afternoon, they were down by the water fountain, the sun glinting off the dark water. Boats drifted lazily under the bridges, gulls cycling in slow arcs overhead. Danny leaned on the railing, tracing patterns in the triplets with her eyes. Danny didn't comment that she was actually watching all the ghosts moving around under the water in the bay. It made sense, being a mob city, but it made him wonder if he should have Greta give the place a visit or step in himself. Then he noticed Duke shift slightly, his body angling between them and something down the block. A man in an unkempt suit had been watching for a moment too long before turning into a side street. Friend of yours? Danny asked lightly. Not really, Duke said, tone still easy, but his eyes tracking the crowd. Gotham's small that way. Let's head back, no one argued. The further Duke drove, the denser the city became, block after block of stacked apartments, old brownstones patched with new brick, gleaming towers that seemed too ambitious for the foundations, holding them up. Sirens flared in the distance and cut off just as quickly, swallowed by the city's constant hum. Then he pressed her nose to the glass. It's so loud. Gets in your bones after a while, Duke said, half smiling. Some people leave and can't stand the silence anywhere else. Me? I like having it in the background. Sam snapped one last photo of a mural that stretched across 3 entire buildings. A phoenix rising out of smoke and rubble. It feels stubborn, she muttered, like the whole place refuses to stay down. Chaz nodded, still scribbling. Every building looks like it's been rebuilt 3 times already. It has, Duke says, but didn't elaborate on. Then he didn't say anything, just let the rhythm of the city thrum in his chest. Then the skyline thinned. The streets grew wider, quieter. One turn bled into another, until the car was following a winding road, flanked by old grove trees, following the same routine back home that they had entered Gotham from. The noise of Gotham fell away, replaced by the crunch of tires on gravel and the faint whisper of leaves. Almost there, Duke said. The trees broke, and Wayne Manor rose into view. It was their first time really seeing it with a clear view. None of them had paid attention yesterday, given how squished they'd been in Tim's town car to begin with, but especially after Cass joined them. It didn't look like a house so much as a fortress, carved into the countryside, sprawling wings of grey stone, turrets and chimneys cutting the sky, windows glowing faintly in the evening gloom. The iron gate swung open at their approach, silent as if on cue. Danny sat back in her seat, wide-eyed. That's not a house. That's a castle. Sam smirked. Gothic architecture. Sprawling estate. Imitating scale? Yeah, it's a castle. Danny hummed. In a post-medieval way, maybe. Danny whistled low. Still crazy big. Duke pulled the car to a stop at the front steps. Alfred was already waiting in the doorway, posture straight, hands clasped behind his back, like the manor itself had sent him. The lantern light at the entry framed him in a glow that was both welcoming and authoritative. The city had been chaos, noisy, colorful, alive. Wayne Manor was the opposite, quiet, heavy, watching. And as Danny eased Danny off his lap, the little girl's head lolled against his shoulder. He couldn't shake the feeling that somehow the building itself was weighing him, measuring him. Jazz tucked her notebook away. Sam stretched her arms. Duke pocketed the keys when he saw Alfred opening the door, and together they climbed the steps, leaving Gotham's relentless energy behind for the Manor's solemn embrace. The Manor felt warmer when they came back inside, the golden light catching in the high windows. Then he launched straight into telling Alfred about every stop, from the bridge to the market to the almost pirate ship they'd seen at the pier. Sam disappeared upstairs to sort through her photos. Sam lingered in the sitting room, asking Alfred about civic programs, while still jolting notes, like she was preparing for a lecture. Danny lingered by the door, watching Duke hang the SUV keys on a wall hook. "Thanks," Danny said. Duke glanced over. "For the tour?" "For knowing when to turn around." Duke gave a small smile. "That's just Gotham. You learn to see things before they see you." Then he thought of the skyline on the bridge, of the name hanging over the water. Gotham had its shadows, but he wasn't going to think about that just now. Later that evening, the Manor had quieted. Jazz was upstairs with Danny, debating whether hot chocolate or herbal tea was the superior bedtime drink. Danny and Sam slipped out of the main sitting room, down a side hall lined with tall windows that caught the moonlight. They ended up in a smaller study, cozier, dimmer, the fire in the corner reduced to embers. "You know," Sam said, leaning against the back of an overstuffed armchair, "this is the first time we'll have had more than 2 minutes alone since we got here." Then he stepped closer. "We could fix that." They didn't get far, just enough for Sam's hand to find his shirt and for Danny's heart to kick up in half-terrified, half-thrilled way before, "Ahem!" Both froze. Stephanie Brown was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, expression pleasant, in the way that made it obvious it was anything but casual. "Mother's intuition," she said lightly. "Also, your absence was noted. Come on. Everyone's in the east parlor." Sam tried for a smirk. "We weren't." "Uh-huh." Steph motioned them forward with one hand, then, as they passed her in the doorway, brought 2 fingers to her eyes and pointed them at Danny in the usual sign, in the universal "I'm watching you" gesture. She didn't say another word, didn't make a scene, just steered them back towards the warm glow of the family gathering, her smile pleasant and her eyes sharp. Then he shot Sam a sideways look once Steph was a step ahead. Sam muttered under her breath, "Guess subtlety's not genetic." Danny only groaned, which made Steph grin like she'd won a prize. Late that night, Danny sat cross-legged on the edge of his bed in Wayne Manor. Danielle perched on a low stool in front of him. Her raven black hair spilled through his fingers as he carefully brushed out the tangles. Danny leaned forward, chin propped on her hands, eyes half-lidded in the cozy routine. Greta Hive's secret was already there when the shadows thickened, stepping through them as naturally as breathing. She didn't startle Danny anymore. They'd met a few days ago under stranger circumstances. That meeting had ended in whispered promises. She'd kept his and Danny's ghostly nature secret from his father, Tim. For reasons she still couldn't quite articulate, she had agreed. Danny looked up from Danny's hair as if he'd been expecting her. Danny didn't flinch. He only set the brush down on the nightstand, rested a steady hand on Danny's shoulder, and met Greta's gaze. "You felt my call," he said simply. "Greta, thanks for coming." Greta frowned. "More than that. It was like a tug. Right in the center of me, I thought." She shook her head. "I thought someone had died nearby, but when I followed it, it led here, to you." Then he gave a small, rueful smile. "Yeah, that was me." His smoky form shifted. It wasn't really a joyous. It felt the pull. "You didn't call, you summoned." "The call is a useful trick," Danny said, though there was no apology in his voice. "But I didn't intend for it to be a summons. I will have to be more careful with that." He rested the brush on the nightstand. Then he turned her head slightly, peeking at the visitor, but then he gave her a gentle nudge. "Bedtime first, kiddo." She huffed, but obeyed, curling up with her pillow while he pulled the blankets up around her shoulders. They didn't even pretend like she was going to try sleeping in the bed Alfred had made for her first night. Then he didn't mind if it made her happy. Only when she was snug under the blankets did he straighten, his tone sharpening into something that belonged less to a teenager and more to a being who lived with authority. "I was in Gotham earlier. The Bay and the Narrows." His jaw tightened. "There are ghosts bound there. A lot of them. Mob hits, if I had to guess. People were dumped like trash and chained to the place where their lives ended." His gaze was steady, too calm for someone describing such horror. "I need to know if it's your job to handle that, or if it falls to someone else." Greta's eyes widened. I sense them, echoes when I pass through, but my duty's always been intimate. Whoever's dying near me, I guide them. That's the way it's always worked. I've never been tasked with a territory. That's what I needed to know." Danny crossed his arms, leaning against the dresser. "If your reach is only what's around you, then those spirits aren't your responsibility." His tone was steady, but there was weight behind it, something older than his 17 years. "And if that's the case, I will have to assign someone else to deal with them." Greta blinked. Assign someone? The silence between them stretched, filled only by the soft sound of Danny's breathing as she drifted towards sleep. Greta shifted, uncomfortably, her smoky foam wisping at the edges. "You talk like you were in charge of something bigger," she muttered. "Bigger than Gotham, bigger than me." Then he didn't answer. He only walked back to the bed, brushing a stray lock of hair from Danny's forehead. His voice was gentle again when he spoke. "Thanks for coming, Greta, really, even if it confuses you." Greta studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "If you call again, I will come." Then he nodded once, as though confirming what he already suspected. Then he turned his eyes upward. The air around him shifted, and Greta's misted form shivered at the presence he drew forth. The shadows bled into shape, status quo, grave, and crowned in iron ivy. Lady Gotham, the spirit of the city, emerged, her eyes glowing with lamplight haze. The genius Loki of Gotham bowed her head slightly, but Danny didn't wait for permission. "Lady Gotham," he said, his tone neither suppliant nor deferential, but absolute. There are bound souls in your bay. I will select one of my own to guide them, to help them cross. Can you guide them to other such souls while they are in your care? The lady's lips curved faintly, her voice low and resonant. Of course, my lord, it will be done. Thank you. Then he replied, quiet but firm. There was no pomp, only certainty. Greta shifted. She had thought Danny a half-ghost boy trying to protect his daughter. The exchange hadn't sounded like a command, but the balance of power was still unmistakable. Lady Gotham had referred to him, not the other way around, but the way Gotham's spirit had spoken to him, not reluctantly, not even dutifully, but naturally, as if deference to him was the order of things, sent a ripple through her. Danny turned back to Danny, brushing her hair off her forehead with gentle fingers. It will be taken care of, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Greta lingered, unsettled. She had promised her silence, and she kept it. But the way Gotham's spirit had bowed to him, addressed him as my lord, made it clear he wasn't just some teenager caught between worlds. And she couldn't help but wonder what exactly was Danny's place among the dead. And with that, she unveiled into mist, vanishing back into the folds of shadow she'd arrived from. The room was quiet once more. Then he sat on the edge of the bed, brushing Danny's hair with his fingers now, instead of the brush. He didn't speak, but in his chest the weight of the infinite realms hummed, ever present, ever patient, and he let it remain unspoken for the night. He was just a dad putting his daughter to bed. And that was the chapter! I hope you liked it. If you did, leave a like and subscribe and share the video. This was once more sponsored by Faith Hellman. Link to her channel in the description. If you want to commission me to read a specific podfic or your podfic or some other podfic for you or other people, contact me. Infos to that are on the screen or in my channel description. And if you commission me, you can get early access to my Discord server where you can hear listen to me live record or just chat with me, I guess. 2 things about the story so far. Firstly, there are far too little interactions on the trip part. And secondly, why did Danny not say anything? Like, why did Danny not protest at all? Like, that's I find kind of sad. Because, like, when she noticed, there's another ghost, why isn't she like, oh, hello, who are you? I want to know about you. You were talking with my brother, father, whatever not. So I want to know who this is, because then, interaction, very important. But that's, again, just my opinion and criticism on all that. But the rest was great. The only reason why Danny would not talk to, the new ghost would be if she's utterly tired. Guess what? I have once more recording highlights for you. I have once more recording highlights for you. If you want to hear me fuck up, you can continue listening. The charts steaming. Flowers spilling from... Oh, it's that kind of flower. As they pass the round. I'm gonna check, just to be sure.
Rot.
Let's check it again.
Houston.
I said Houston. But Danny from waving to another kid. At least once he had... God damn, why am I laughing again? At least once he'd been... There I go again.
Ambitious.
Sam smirked. Gothic architecture. Sprawling, estate, and authoritative. an authoritative okay, where was I again? Because someone else distracted me for a moment. They didn't even pretend like she was going to try sleeping in the bed. Alfred made Alfred They didn't to the place where they died. To the place where the lady's lips curled. The lady's enjoy the rest of your time and see you next time.